Thanks, Patrick. Good to see you again. And to all of my friends here at the Broadband World Forum. So this, I've been asked to, I think, address one of the more vexing questions in front of this industry and ours as well. You know, how will these things coexist on a very finite network? And the problem doesn't seem to be getting any better, and it seems like we should have made more progress than we have at this point in time. So what's up with that? Why? I'd like to split my story into three parts. The first is why I hate technology. This will become apparent. And then I want to think about this question, and it still is a question in many people's mind. Is there such a thing as sustainable video on the network? Is there? I don't know. And then a little twist on the old adage that content is king. I believe that a technology on the forefront of the evolution of the internet called content-centric networking will reign supreme, and it is absolutely necessary that it does if we are to answer this question in the affirmative. So with that, let me start with why I hate technology. I don't really hate technology. Of course, I'm in Silicon Valley, but I just really hate inefficient technology. And video delivery on the network today is perhaps the ultimate inefficient technology sets of decisions that have been made. And it's really for no good reason that I can see. And there's no question that these technology decisions are the reason that I'm sitting here today talking to you about this problem. Of course, there's technology that's good. Video technology has proven to be very popular. The fact that I can watch video on this little cigarette package called my mobile phone, that's an incredible technology in and of itself. That's good. What's perhaps not as good are some of the technology decisions these OTT providers have made that are just plain bad for the network. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And in fairness to them, many times they are not in complete control of their own destiny. To be sanctioned by the content industries, they must oftentimes outsource technology decisions and architectures to this industry. And it's well known that this industry perhaps doesn't always have the interests of the network in mind or their consumers or let alone these very providers that are their willing partners. So that's a problem, and I don't really see it getting any better anytime soon. There's really just an indifference to the network that will continue to persist. Barring any sort of fundamental transformation of these industries, I really don't see it happening. So, is it hopeless? I don't know, but this is a typical Friday night on the network, and this is the kind of thing that drove me out of this industry and into BitTorrent, because it'd be hard-pressed to design a less efficient system, stream by stream by stream by stream, piling up at peak time, 7 p.m. on the network, and the result is predictable. It is, a stripping away of the statistical multiplexing that underpinned the broadband model, which I was a part of it at home. It's frankly unsustainable for the networks. If we continue to do this, there is no way that you could translate broadcast television viewing to the internet. I did some calculations once, and I think it was going to be 20 or 30 nuclear power plants would be required just to keep the servers cold to continue to do what we do today on the network. That's not sustainable. And the end result for the consumers isn't that great either. You're sitting there watching Netflix and it buffers. Why? Why does it do that? There's really no need for that. And that creates a situation that the consumers don't particularly enjoy as well. It's just bad all the way around, except for perhaps one industry. So, that's a pretty gloomy picture. Is it hopeless? Should we all throw in the towel, as Patrick said, and just go home? I think we should still try to answer this question. Is there a way to make video sustainable? And I pose this question only because we've seen it in action. There is a way, and it is as close to BitTorrent as you're going to get. So let me ask the room, how many of you in the room know what UTP is? Just a quick show of hands. So this is the power of BitTorrent marketing. I think you see 3 people. That's amazing. How many of you know that we voluntarily deprioritized our traffic 3 years ago in the network neutrality debates? Again, a show of hands. Less, 2. So we did. That's what UTP is. It is a new transport protocol that is less than best effort. It's a service that gives network capacity back to the providers if it needs to be used for other applications. And I could devote an entire talk. In fact, several years ago at the Broadband World Forum, I did devote an entire talk to UTP. Just think of it like a big yield sign in front of BitTorrent traffic. If something needs the right of way, and it could be anything else, it could be Netflix, it could be Spotify, it could be web browsing, it could be Skype, BitTorrent traffic will get out of the way of that application. It'll give the network back to those applications. So that in and of itself creates a more sustainable future for video because it allows the network to be utilized in ways that it's currently not getting utilized today. For one thing, it allows downloads to be spread out over a much larger period of time. If you are able to download traffic at 4 in the morning, there's not a lot of demands for the network at 4 in the morning. This is a perfectly fine use of a very fixed cost asset. It's like the plane that's empty. You want to put people in it to get something out of that asset. And that's what BitTorrent and distributed technologies do in general. They spread out the use of the network over a much larger time frame. It's not about peak instant gratification delivery. And because UTP, as I just described, allows the network to ebb and flow, the operators can run their pipes at 100% utilization, and the network will only feel like 50% utilization. This allows you to get more out of the CapEx that you've already put, the billions of dollars that you put into the network. It's like free capacity, if your capacity planners would use UTP in this way. So if there's a substantial percentage of traffic that is UTP enabled, and BitTorrent, last time I checked, does represent a good chunk of traffic, this type of scenario is possible. You can actually get more out of the network than you probably thought you could. That's towards a more sustainable future. And it's worked amazingly well. We have done things that probably no other provider can do. Just a few weeks ago, we did a BitTorrent bundle with a band called Mickey Hart, or a guy called Mickey Hart and his band. And they shot an entire 2-hour concert in 4K. Now, this thing was incredible. It was like, the concert was great, but the fact that this 4K video was like 278 gigabytes. And then we actually delivered that to a mass audience of Mickey Hart fans, of which there are more than I thought. And that was probably something that nobody else could do. The fact that we could push an object of that immense size on the networks that we have today, I don't think you'll see too many other people doing this for a while. The networks will get better, and maybe even someday Netflix will be streaming 4K, but maybe not for a while. So I think there is a more sustainable future, but the future is even brighter than that, and it is built around this concept called content-centric networking. It's not a very well-known term. In fact, let's do another show of hands. How many people have heard of this or even know what it is? Okay, we're getting numbers smaller, smaller, smaller. We're down to one person. So it's probably best described in the context of communication history. So let's go back in time and talk about the telephone, which was probably the first means of mass communication. The era of communication was probably born with this invention, the telephone. It allowed one-to-one communication. And eventually we had technologies that were broadcast, which allowed one-to-many communication, like radio and television. And this was a way for a single message to be beamed out to millions of people at any given time. And these were great technologies. They all changed the world. We built sustainable business models around them. Everything was great. And then the internet comes along, and for the first time we introduced a model that allowed many-to-many communication. And it, too, has changed the world in profound ways. And suddenly we had a network where everybody could interact in this way, and they could get things from the network that they couldn't get any other way. You could go to places on the internet and find content and find music, and you could go to places on the internet and do banking or buy airline tickets. And this model has been incredible. I think we'd all agree, right? It's powered our entire industry, and it deserves to be praised. But if you notice the context of the things that I just said, it was an internet, it was a network of destinations. It was about going to places. Destination sites, or even the very architecture itself built around this thing called an IP address, meant that you were going to a place on the internet. And whenever you put things in one place, you find that certain things can happen, and they're not all good. For one thing, those places can be blocked. You can be denied access to those places. Or you could be firewalled off. Entire countries can, in fact, be firewalled off from places on the internet. And that's not great for free speech. And we've also learned recently that if you put a lot of information in one place, it's very easily surveilled. And that's not great for the internet either. So BitTorrent is different. And the academics looked at this problem and they said, you know what? The internet needs to evolve, and it needs to evolve away from a network of places, and it needs to evolve to a network about content. The network needs to become about what I want to get from the network, not about where I go, what server do I go, what CDN is going to deliver that content. That's the old architecture of the internet. The new architecture is replacing where with what. It's about what, not where. And the academics that work on this problem, the Van Jacobsons at Xerox PARC and many others at all of the research institutions that are thinking about this, they all point to one real-world example. In fact, the only one they've seen so far that operates this way, and that's BitTorrent. And that's because BitTorrent addresses every unique individual piece of content. It has its own address. It has a content address. It's like the library that has a Dewey Decimal address on every book. That's the way libraries address content. It's the way the internet will address content in the future. And this has all kinds of properties that are good because, of course, once you've ingrained into a network that is about not destinations, but the content that you want to proliferate on the network, that is essentially like hardwiring free speech into the fabric of the internet. And I think that's a pretty good thing. And that's something that could save the promise of the internet, the original promise that the internet was designed for. And that promise is under assault. I think we all have to recognize that when you do consolidate so much information in individual places that you'll run into some problems. And we put a message like this and some others like it on billboards in a few markets trying to get this word out. We didn't tell anybody who was behind these messages. If you remember, maybe you don't, there was a movie where aliens took over our culture and you had to wear sunglasses to see the message behind the advertising. It was kind of like that, but we really just wanted to throw this out there and just let it fester for a bit. How many people actually say, I hate that, or I hate the other messages that we put throughout? And after we did that for a couple of weeks, and Silicon Valley was one of the places we did it because they've been somewhat complicit in this, we then changed the world to the way it should be. Your data does not belong to these agencies. Your data belongs to you. And it can, once again, belong to you if you rebuild the internet the way it was originally designed to be, decentralized, putting the intelligence at the edge. And this is a new product that we fortuitously had in the market several months before this news broke, called BitTorrent Sync, which is essentially a distributed Dropbox, for those of you who know what Dropbox is, except it doesn't have the limits, and it doesn't have the cost, and it doesn't come with the NSA either. So this is probably well-timed. Sometimes things just break your way, and luck favors the prepared mind. We were definitely prepared for this one. But there are other things as well. Decentralization is the core tenet of the internet's architecture, and there's much more work to be done in this area. We intend and have been hard at work decentralizing other parts of it as well, from content in this thing we call the BitTorrent bundle to BitTorrent Sync that I've already talked about, and ultimately even to BitTorrent Live, which is essentially a distributed live broadcasting technology. So I'll return once again to the theme of the topic. What if we made these OTT providers look more like a content-centric network? What would happen then? I think we'd end up with the best of all worlds. I think we'd end up with services that clearly resonate with consumers, the entire catalog of Netflix, for example, and their ability to mine the data that they have to essentially predict my viewing habits. I mean, let's face it, if I watch the first episode of Breaking Bad, you might as well just give me all of them because sooner or later I'm going to consume it. And so much of the viewing is of this pattern that there's a lot of predictive work that can be done to give you an idea of what kind of content you're going to be interested in next. Of course, I'll need storage, and this has kind of gone by the wayside, but you could think of storage as nothing like nothing more than a DVR. It's really what it is. It's like an over-the-top DVR, if you will. And then layer in some technologies that look or are from BitTorrent specifically, things like distributed downloads where I can spread the download out over the course of a day. Of course, UTP I think is absolutely critical. Even if you just did UTP to their servers, this would be a better world, but you could do so much more than that because it allows it to be very network friendly. This allows the network to be used for things that are critical and gives capacity back to these applications that need it, and still reserves more than enough capacity to get the job done at the end of the day. And of course, BitTorrent delivery today, if you add up all this together, I think you're going to come away with very happy broadband consumers and an ability to deliver better and obviously a lot more video, even 4K video without buffering. That's going to be a much better consumer experience, and it's something that we can have today. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Before you leave, we see the people are shifting a lot of content over the internet today, using, in many cases, their own implementation, their own players, their own semantics for delivering video over their networks. what do you do to talk to these people in order to have them, well, adopt your technology, or at least adopt the end goal, which is
Yeah.
basically to have
Be friendlier.
a more content-friendly
Yeah.
platform
Yeah, so
on the internet.
the question for the video was how do we get the word out to these other over-the-top players that this would be a good thing to do? And I think that's the trickiest challenge, and it was set up in the first part of the story that a lot of the times these guys can't make their own technology decisions. They're just not allowed. The content industry says this is the technology you'll use. It doesn't even need to be good technology. It obviously isn't. And until we address that problem, it's going to be difficult to get a lot of content moved over to these more friendly formats.
Yeah.
But if you can start there, then I think the dam would break because they clearly want to be better citizens on the network. I know these guys at all the OTT providers. They're good network engineers, and they want to do the right thing.
I see. So, well, then it becomes government.
Well, I don't know. I hope not. Ideally, there would be a world where you want more content on the internet. And when that world arrives, and it will eventually arrive, then I think you'll see these industries loosening up and allowing more broad-based, more friendly technologies.
All right.
Just
Thanks
patience,
a lot.
Patience.
Thanks a lot, Eric.
You're
Nice
welcome.
to see you again.
Thank you.